What's probably the most awaited Arknights banner is finally here, despite the fact that it's for the anniversary, which is on the 16th of January. But I'm not complaining. I'm just here to talk about the units we got. I'll just say this up front, this banner is fantastic. If you throw some rolls at it but you aren't aiming for anyone in particular, if you get one of them, no matter who it is, it's a win-win-win situation. Whether you already have a unit with a similar niche or not, even excluding gameplay elements, we're getting 2 new excellent waifus and a husbando. There's really no downsides to this. But enough of that, let's get into what they actually do.
第3作戦小隊所属先方通信員のエリジウムただいま着任したよ。通信機越しじゃなくて直接話せたのは初めてだよね、ドクター。
When Myrtle first came out, she took the Arknights world by storm as the DP generating overlord. Then Elysium came out and said, no. Me. Now, I just want to get this out of the way, he did not power creep her. Sure, their first skills are very similar and his is better by comparison, but Myrtle is still incredibly fantastic at her job and has a lower cost since she's a 4-star, which is great for this type of unit as it's usually the first that you want to deploy. Plus, within their own niche, they both have different niches. This is first displayed by Elysium's talent, showing that he's much more of a sniper support, reducing their deployment cost by 1 or 2 depending if he's at E1 or E2, and increasing their attack speed by either 10 or 20 while he's using his skills. This is actually pretty great for a couple of reasons. First one being that while this is nice for all of your snipers, it especially shines with the DPS ones, since they already have a relatively low cost. The second part of this talent is also great with them since they also usually already have a pretty quick attack speed. But like, for an example, with Exia on skill 3 level 7, it's absolutely insane. She would attack every 0.76 seconds. Need I say more? So needless to say, he synergizes with her extremely well. There's not much that can really be said about his first skill. Over 8 seconds, he'll obtain 18 cost points, meaning 2.25 DP every second. Without a doubt, this is the most bang for your buck skill when it comes to generating DP. If he's on the field for 3 minutes, at skill level 7, he'll have generated approximately 90 DP all by himself. Also, I didn't mention this before, but while using his skills, he won't be blocking any enemies, but we're all used to that because of Myrtle anyways. Skill 2 is where he deviates completely from his 4-star counterpart. With part of the skill, he'll be obtaining 20 DP over 15 seconds, but with the other part of his skill, he locks on to 4 nearby enemies within his new range. What this does is decrease their movement speed by 60%, their defense by 25%, and if they had stealth, they don't anymore. This loops back around to the sniper support aspect of him, which is who I feel like this skill synergizes best with. If we're talking DPS snipers, they already have a quick attack speed, which is now even quicker because Elysium is using his skill, but now they get to attack even more since the enemies are much slower, and those attacks do even more damage since they have reduced defense. This skill's charging time is on the average but low side, so he can actually use it fairly consistently. Overall, Elysium is a fantastic support and cost-generating unit, as well as being a husbando to many. But don't take any of this wrong. If you have a Myrtle, she'll definitely still have her use. The two actually aren't even super comparable since she's a healing support and he's a debuff support. Both of them are fantastic in their own ways.
Hajimemashite. 私はロドスのエンジニア部門所属のウィーディ。ドクターのことは前からよく聞いてるの。これからよろしくね。あ、握手なら手袋をしてるこの右手でお願い。
Weedy is an absolute game changer when it comes to pushing specialists, and without a doubt the most unique one out of them all. As soon as you look at her talents, this is pretty apparent. She has a water cannon that she can use that lasts 15 seconds that attacks one enemy instead of Weedy who attacks 2, and pushes them away with a small force. This cannon costs 5 DP and has about a 35-second redeployment time, and thankfully its cost doesn't raise whenever you're about to deploy it again. When she's at E2, not only does this cannon cannon lasts for 20 seconds instead, but now its force is raised by 1 level for both its attacks and skills, which we'll get more into when we're talking about her skill 3. It has a medium force now, which is pretty good, and if it's deployed in any of the 4 immediate tiles surrounding her, it'll give Weedy 1 SP every 3 seconds. 99.9% of the time, this water cannon's probably going to be either behind her or in front of her, so you can get a little bit of extra push force. So really, there's no need to worry about where you'll place it in order to get this bonus. First skill is her basic pusher skill. Every 6 seconds, she can push the enemies she's blocking or that are in front of her with a medium force, dealing 135% physical damage, which would be 740 attack power at E1 max, and stuns them for 0.9 seconds. The stun is really good considering the fact that unless you're pushing an enemy into a hole or off a ledge, pushers are often used as stallers. Just like shot and feeder, the force of this skill is increased to large if you M3 it, as well as increasing the stun to 1.2 seconds and the attack boost to 150%, leading her attack to be 822 at E2 level 1. Skill 2 is where things start to get more unique. First of all, it increases her attack time to 2.64 seconds, which honestly doesn't make much of a difference since now all her attacks will push, and previously she could push once every 6 seconds, so nothing to complain about here. But what does it actually do? For starters, she gets an extra talon range and her attack goes up to 170%, being 931 at E1 max, as well as her attacks now being ranged splash attacks. While she can usually attack 2 targets, this means that now both the damage and push effect will splash out to others. I don't know exactly how many units this affects or how many tiles it splashes to, so I suggest watching some showcases of this skill afterwards so you can get a better idea of it, as it's pretty visual. This is a skill with infinite duration, so it takes a little longer to charge, but it's shorter than Aya or Silver Ash's skill 3 charging times, which only lasts a matter of seconds once they're in effect, opposite to this one. At M2, this skill gains another extra talon range, and at M3, its force is raised to medium instead of small. Skill 3 is OP. I could end this segment right now, and that's all you'd have to know to get an understanding of it, but I'll explain further anyways. Once again, highly suggest watching showcases of this one because honestly, it's just insane. In a pretty large range, she fires a shot of compressed liquid nitrogen, which deals 320% magic splash damage that can hit up to 5 enemies and, obviously, pushes the targets away, this time with a large force. At E240, this is 1,929 attack power on its own, discounting the fact that it hits multiple enemies. And now, her water cannon is about to be more useful than ever. Before this, it was already pretty great. Every so often you could put it down and help her push enemies even further due to their combined force, although it didn't make a staggeringly huge difference since it only had a small or medium force at E2. But now, with skill 3, the cannon fires the same shot as her. First of all, the timing for this is perfect. At level 7, the skill takes 37 seconds to charge, and the water cannon has an approximately 35-second redeployment time, so you can deploy it, pop her skill, retreat it, wait for 37 seconds to pass, and do it all again. Although that's kind of the least important part of this skill. It firing the same shot means 2 things. 1, it's also attacking at a ridiculous range for a pusher and with an even stronger force than her. If you remember Weedy's second talent, it raises her cannon's attack force by 1, meaning that in this case it's actually pushing them with a huge force instead of just a large one. And 2, it deals the same amount of magic damage as she does, aka 1,929 attack, and it can hit 2 enemies instead of her 5. So in total, they're attacking 7 enemies with 3,858 power, as well as pushing them with a large and huge force combined. Actually, fun fact, at M3, Weedy's own force goes up to huge, meaning that the cannons goes up to, I don't know, super huge? Basically, it's the largest force in the entire game, which is pretty cool. Also, for 6 seconds after this, the enemies receive true damage proportional to the distance they've been moved, but I couldn't really find exactly what this meant. Probably because it wasn't looking in the right places, but I did some big braining after looking at a showcase, and here's what I came up with. Weedy and her cannon can push a heavy defender type N approximately 2 tiles over because he's a big boy, and he only has about 1/5 of his HP left, that being 2,000 from a total of 10,000. After about 5 seconds he actually dies, leading me to believe that he lost about 400 HP on each one of those seconds. Since true damage negates both resistance and defense, this is the amount of damage she's receiving per second and not just the amount of HP is depleting. Since the amount of damage is correlated with the distance he was pushed, in this case once again being approximately 2 tiles, which I guess means that for each tile push it correlated to 200 damage, leading it to be 400 del per second since it was pushed 2 tiles. And at the end of the day, Weedy is a pretty overpowered unit and a pretty great waifu. She recently got a winter skin which is honestly adorable and turns her water cannon into a nutcracker.
Sarukazuの傭兵 W よ。本当にお久しぶりね。って言っても、あんたが思う久しぶりとは意味が違うかもね。でも別にいいわ。今のあんたは私が探してたあんたじゃないから。今のところは安全ってわけ。そう、今のところはね。
Last but not least, the long-awaited W is finally here. If you're interested in her lore at all and this is the first video of mine you've watched, I made a video all about that last week, but if you just want to know what she does, I won't delay that any longer. I may be dumb or just misunderstanding this, but her first talent seems like it kinda contradicts itself a little bit. For the first 10 seconds after she's deployed, she gains 40 or 60% physical and magic evasion, which is pretty good, but at the same time she becomes less likely to be targeted. I mean, I'm not complaining, it's nice to not get damage dealt to you as soon as you're on the battlefield, but why have an evasion buff if enemies won't be targeting you in the first place? I'm just a little confused. Either way, it's a decent talent, not much to talk about. Her second talent increases the physical damage taken by any enemies who've been stunned within her attack range by 18%. They have to be stunned before she attacks, so it doesn't come into effect if they're attacked and get the stun at the same time, which might be a little tricky to time since most stuns don't really last that long, while she has quite a lengthy attack time. But whenever the timing does coincide just right, like it can with her third skill, it's a really good little bonus. First skill allows her to immediately fire a grenade that deals 310% physical damage and stuns the targets it hits for 2.1 seconds. At E1 max, this is 2,204 attack to multiple enemies since she's an AoE sniper, which is quite a lot. If you happen to M3 this skill, the stun actually does manage to coincide with her talent since it'll now be in effect for 3 seconds while she takes 2.8 seconds to attack. It's just a bit of a shame that such a simple skill has a fairly long cooldown considering what it does, but it's definitely not bad at all. W's second skill can lead to the battlefield looking like you just booted up Minesweeper for the first time in 8 years, and I love it. Every 10 seconds, being approximately every third or fourth attack, she buries a landmine somewhere within her attack range that lasts 120 seconds and only triggers once an enemy passes over them. It also seems like those that are planted on elevated tiles trigger once enemies pass beside them, so there's no need to worry about wasted potential when they aren't on land tiles. Once an enemy does pass over, the landmine gets set off and deals 250% physical damage to all nearby enemies, which usually means the 8 tiles surrounding the first one, and stunning them for 1.8 seconds. This deals 1,777 attack at E1 max, which may seem underwhelming compared to her first skill, but while that one deals basic AoE damage, this one deals damage to all the enemies in the surrounding tiles, which can make quite a huge difference. Plus, there's the fact that another landmine could have been planted right in front of them, meaning that as soon as the sun wears off and someone takes that extra step, it's honestly pretty great. Although even at M3, the stun isn't long enough for there to be a guarantee that W will be able to attack them again and get her bonus damage. But since this is an auto trigger skill and the time the bombs actually go off doesn't depend on her own personal attack time, it's still a possibility that it'll happen. Skill 3 isn't quite as much fun to watch as Skill 2, but it's still really good. She'll plant bombs on up to 3 enemies that have the highest HP within her range, and after a small delay, these bombs will explode and deal 280% physical damage to all the nearby enemies, that being 2,237 at E240 and stuns them for 4 seconds. Now, 2,237 to 3 separate enemies is already great on its own, but the fact that this also hits the other enemies nearby them is even better. The 3 enemies who have the highest HP could possibly have vastly different movement speeds, meaning that one could already be outside her range once the bomb explodes, affecting even more enemies that didn't even have the chance to get hit by this in the first place. The amount of targets this could hit in the end is actually kinda insane, allowing her to do so much damage in total. A 4-second stun is also nothing to overlook. It's a pretty long time, and if they're still within her range once this effect takes action, they'll be getting hit with her talent next time she attacks. So instead of an attack of 799, anyone who was stunned gets hit with 942 attack power. Even if an enemy is out of her range by the time the bomb triggers, being stunned for 4 seconds is still great, since if they aren't being blocked, that's more time they have to receive more damage, and if they are being blocked, that's less damage your units will be taking since they won't be getting attacked. Just by bumping the skill up to M1, it adds an extra target who gets a bomb planted on them, and at M3, the stun is now raised to 5 seconds. All her skills have their own usage, especially her second and third ones, which seem like they'd be incredibly fun to play around with. Overall, she's a great unit and 100% worth investing in, even if you already have a Sessa and a Meteorite, since she still has her own unique niche. Plus, I mean, come on, W's back at Rhodes Island, you gotta at least appreciate that fact. And that was it for this one. The banner came out yesterday, and I really hope you're having better luck than me. 30 pulls in, and all I've gotten is a Swire dupe. Depending on your time zone, and depending on if you're watching this on the day I uploaded it or not, today is the very last day of the hell year known as 2020. So here's an advanced Happy New Year's. May your 2021 be much better than this last year, and may it be filled with the best gacha pulls of your life. I don't really have much to say other than that, but thank you very much for watching. If you're new here, consider sticking around, and I'll see you another day, and this time in another year.